When you see an iceberg in a nice blue sky day just off the coast, they're really massive. They're quite spectacular, and it's hard to imagine how you could miss such a thing.
Even at night, an iceberg will normally show up because of wave action around its base. But Sunday, April 14th, 1912 is a most unusual night. There's no moon. And the sea is strangely, absolutely flat calm.
In a calm night, there'd be no wave action, and it would be extremely difficult to see until you were almost on top of it.
11:40 p.m. Lookout Fred Fleet sees something blacker than night, right in Titanic's path. You're watching Titanic's final moments on the History Channel. Day 3 on the Keldysh. The first dive is ending. Once the hatches are open and the divers are out, there's only a brief moment for photos and quick greetings before it's on to more pressing business.
Diving it with a veteran. Only way to do it. I mean, we really got the full tour.
I'm sorry to say, though, that Titanic has deteriorated a lot. Noticeably so. And now you'll excuse us, we have an appointment with Les Toilettes.
After taking care of business, the team debriefs.
Location, we found.
Everyone wants to hear what happened with the ribbons of steel.
Good job of documenting it. It didn't look like double bottom to me. It looked like a box beam, but I couldn't nail it down. A good portion of it is buried. But
the failure to find Concannon's ribbons of steel is a major disappointment.
continue.
But continuing further south, John reports they did find an intriguing trail of debris.
All total, it seemed to us like a relatively narrow corridor of debris, specifically coal. It literally is a trail that leads you right to the stern of the wreck.
It's like a runway.
A narrow trail, mostly coal, extending nearly a mile south of the stern.
Dribbling out of the ship, or was it pouring out of the
It seems to imply Titanic may have traveled a good distance with a sizable hole in her.
This thing had to be opened from the bottom, thousands of feet away.
Yes, and because of the heavy objects that came out that we know would have gone virtually straight down, those are all up near the bow and the stern. So this is a long distance for her to have floated with a hole in her.
No, I think what I'd like to do is sort of give an idea of the drift of the coal. But
The trail of coal is interesting, but no one's sure of its significance.
We then quickly moved up onto the wreck.
When the talk turns to Richie and Ralph's dive,
The capstans,
what they report is less confusing,
we forward
yet
hauled,
more emotional.
and then came up and followed the main mast up right onto the bridge where we looked at the telemotor. From there, we could actually see all of the, I'd call it pollution. I mean, everybody and their sister has to drop a plaque up there, and it detracts, I think, from the wreck site. The next most dramatic visual for me is to come onto the stern, because for me, that's where the human story of Titanic is. That's where people fought for their lives. It's a very emotional thing. Although that's not going to help us in our search, that is a moment. That's my moment on Titanic.
The first dive is over. They did find an interesting trail of coal. But whatever it means, it's not sections of Titanic's bottom not what they're looking for.
The question is, which is the forward end?
The next day, the team splits up.
Now, at this point,
John, David, Simon, and Richie joined Mary Ann Morin from the Woods Hole lab to review high-definition video of dive number 1.
Well, Simon, at this point, the realization is settling in that this isn't the bottom of the hull.
The only thing that I've seen that even remotely looks like this is the expansion joints.
You know, could be part of the expansion joint.
It's part of the stove.
Kitchen stove.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that would make sense.
While they're doing that, Roger Long and Ralph White will make a second dive in the mirror. Their objective? Examine the bilge keels, 2 narrow strips of steel running along part of the hull. If Titanic did suffer grounding damage, the starboard bilge keel would almost certainly be damaged as well. If this dive finds damage on the bilge keel, it will be strong evidence to support the grounding theory. Sunday, April 14th, 11:40 p.m. Lookout Fred Fleet sounds the alarm. Iceberg, right ahead. In third class, Milvina and Bertie Dean are asleep.
My mother and father heard a terrific noise. My father went up on deck to see what it was, came back and said apparently the ship had struck an iceberg, get the children out of bed and on deck immediately.
Trying to swerve around the iceberg, Titanic has sideswiped it, bumping along in a series of blows. Rivets give way, seams between plates open. The exact nature of the damage will never be known, but eyewitnesses are very clear.
There were 2 very long, detailed inquiries. People saw water coming in along the starboard side, and they were quite clearly able to work out what had gone wrong in that section of the ship.
But was that the only damage? Buried in the 1912 inquiries, there is other evidence which points to a mystery that has never been solved. An hour and 40 minutes after the collision, water is coming into boiler room number 4, not from the side, but from underneath, up through the floor. Could this mean there was bottom damage?
Now, boiler room number 4 was not damaged by the side damage from the iceberg. Therefore, that could indicate that there was additional damage beneath the double bottom.
Was Titanic's double bottom damaged as well? The mystery remains unsolved. But either way, she is already doomed. Few on board realize it, but Titanic has barely 2 hours to live. You're watching Titanic's final moments on the History Channel. April 15th, 12 a.m. 20 minutes since the collision. Captain Smith has radio operators start sending distress calls and orders the lifeboats uncovered. In second class, 16-year-old Edith Brown and her parents have gone up on deck to see what's happening.
When they got up there was wise cracks. Hey, there's ice on the foredeck. People throwing ice at each other. Someone else said, well, perhaps we ought to go down and join in the fun. And another person said, well, I think it's all going to be called off soon. We can all go back to bed.
Down in third class, Melvina Dean's father is taking no chances.
He got us wrapped up in blankets and things, and with the help of a sailor, up on deck. That might have been quite hard, because we were down the bottom. We had to get up on top. But we managed it anyhow.
Up in the first class lounge, Wallace Hartley and the musicians begin playing cheerful music to keep spirits up. 2,200 people are now facing a life and death emergency. Their survival is the responsibility of 59-year-old Captain Edward J. Smith.
Captain Smith, then as now, is God. Absolutely, completely in command. Every aspect of the control and operation of the ship, the behavior of the passengers, everything.
He faces considerable obstacles. First, the awful mathematics of the lifeboats. By law, Titanic is required to carry just 16. She actually has 20, but they'll only hold 1,200 people. 1,000 passengers have nowhere to go. Smith must organize crew and passengers, load 1,200 people into 20 boats, launch the boats, and do it all in 90 minutes. It's more than any one man could handle.
After the collision, there aren't all that many reports of Captain Smith. But he's probably suffering a great deal from shock, but he was in a position where he should have been able to take command and give very succinct orders to his officers.
Confusion builds as lifeboats are loaded, then launched.
Because I was so small, I was in a sack, and my mother realized that she had me, but not my brother. So she had more to worry about. Obviously, my mother couldn't do anything in a lifeboat but stay where she was, trying to keep me warm. It was so bitterly cold.
There's no consistency. On the starboard side, First Officer Murdoch orders women and children into the boats first. But if no more are standing there, he allows men. To port, Second Officer Lightoller says women and children only.
Titanic was a floating microcosm of 1912 society. In that society, any of those men on the Titanic, they might not have given up their place to a woman, but they would have felt, in not doing so, that they were doing wrong.
My mother always said she's never seen her father look so sad. My grandmother kept shouting to him, "Go around the other side and find our lifeboat, Tom." But he never moved. As they lowered away, he just cupped his hands together and he said, "I'll see you in New York." Never took his eyes off him. Like many other men, he knew he wasn't going anywhere that night. And those were the last words they ever heard him say.
No one seems to realize the boats can be launched fully loaded. 12:45 a.m. The first boat, number 7, leaves, with 37 seats empty. Over the next 90 minutes, the tragedy multiplies. Number 3, 33 empty seats. Number 5, 28 empty. Number 6, 37 seats empty.
Whatever way you look at it, there are unnecessary deaths. Doesn't matter whether there weren't enough lifeboats on the Titanic to start with. Captain Smith allowed lifeboats to be launched